The AAA gaming market has been falling apart. As we know, we can see this with Activision, you can see this with Ubisoft, BioWare recently with EA, and now apparently Warner Bros. As well. And that's at least what Mr. Maddie's Plays says here, at least according to the description. Have not watched the video yet, but I'm assuming that's what he's going to be talking about here. And he's someone that we've watched a lot. I started watching him back in like Fallout 4 era, and now he covers pretty much all games, and we've watched him before on the channel. So let's see what he has to say about this Warner Bros. Games thing. And if you haven't heard about what's going on here, it's pretty wild and pretty systemic with what's going on. With Ubisoft, with EA, things along those lines. So,
salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today. And like any great gaming company, they're defined by their IP, right? So when you have a AAA gaming company with all the money in the world and really exciting IP, say like a Batman or a Harry Potter, all of your imaginations.
So this is talking about Warner Bros. Because if you look at their IPs, it's wild.
Probably go wild, right? Like this company has the potential to do something special. It's interesting to me that WB Games as a publisher does not find itself in the same conversation that Ubisoft is in or a BioWare is in, where this is a company.
Okay, I want you to see this. This is a list of Warner Bros. Games. If you go like way back, the Lego games, Injustice, Batman games. What else do we have here? Lego Marvel Avengers. So all of the Lego games are often very, very popular, but they have so much more than that. Like Injustice, Scribblenauts is one of them, which was also success. They've got a lot. Lord of the Rings, all of the Lord of the Rings games. But if you go and like look, whoops, I went a little too far there. If you go and look at like their games since, let's go since like essentially COVID era, Hitman 2, Hitman Absolution, Blood Money, all very good. Those are like just being brought back. We kind of know that. Lego, Mortal Kombat 11, Harry Potter Wizards Unite. I don't know that one. That looks like a mobile game. Lego Jurassic World, Lego Star Wars Battles, Back for Blood. So this is where things start to get interesting. That one didn't go so great. Then we have Skywalker Saga. Apparently this one was really good. Gotham Knights, that one was when things started to fall apart, but then Hogwarts Legacy comes out, huge success. Harry Potter Magic Awakened, that was from NetEase, that was a mobile game. Mortal Kombat 1, of course, Mortal Kombat success for Hogwarts Legacy on the Nintendo Switch, and then a bunch of stuff comes to the Switch. Then the failures. Then we have Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, flop. MultiVersus, flop. I think the Quidditch Champions didn't do well, but then we have the Arkham Shadows, which I believe, yeah, that was the VR game. Quidditch Champions comes to Nintendo Switch, and then Wonder Woman is like really the only other thing on here, and that's to be announced, and apparently it's not even coming out this year. So does that mean Warner Bros. Has 0 games coming out this year? Might be. And that's a huge problem because MultiVersus and Suicide Squad, the way that they were supposed to actually make money over the coming years, gone. So you can see where the problem comes in here.
On the downswing and could easily be shut down or sold off at any moment, and likely has a few games left in them to start turning things around.
What though?
Make no mistake, if not for Hogwarts Legacy, WB Games would probably not be existing right now and likely under ownership somewhere else. In fact, this should be no surprise at all if you're tracking headlines, because WB Discovery President and CEO David Zaslav actually quite literally stated their games business is, quote, substantially underperforming its current potential. And they just lost their president after 12 years there, which, I mean, dude, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, when you see what I'm about to cover for you all, I'm surprised this man was employed for as long as he was. I can't wait to hear. But as part of David Haddad's exit, it was described as, quote, thoughtfully and purposefully chosen when the release schedule is lighter, end quote. So effectively,
it's super light. There's nothing coming this year.
They're retooling because they need to start making money. And I know a lot of people focus on Suicide Squad a tremendous amount, but it goes beyond Suicide Squad for WB Games. We'll be talking about, of course, the state of Rocksteady, their premier superhero developer, but we'll be talking about Monolith. We'll be talking about Player First Games, who made MultiVersus. We'll be talking about Avalanche, who made Hogwarts Legacy. We'll be talking about NetherRealm a little bit, and so much more in this video. In fact, it's staggering, stunning, just how shit of a spot this company is in. So,
that's what I was just saying.
Grab your favorite snack, a drink. Let's go down the facts here,
Cheers.
shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, WB Games is taking quite a nosedive. If you want to know what's going on in the industry, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. So, of course, we've got to start.
By the way, so this year, I used to always drink the white monsters, but this year they released the zero sugar Monster Energy, and they taste, I'm not sponsored by them, but Monster, hit me up. They taste exactly like the original ones. 10 calories. 10 calories for this whole can. Genius.
Our research, our deep dive.
By the way, Ghost energy drinks are better than those ones. They just are very expensive in Canada.
At Rocksteady. How could you have a conversation about WB Games without talking about Rocksteady? Suicide Squad needs no introduction at all. It was a $200 million flop, as stated by WB themselves. And Bloomberg actually reported that this was anticipated by WB execs to be a billion-dollar franchise, completely missing the pulse of what people like.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Oh my God, worst call ever.
Rocksteady for. Support of the game was terminated January of 2025, and their QA team has been halved in size with more redundancies made beyond that. Now, they're reportedly moving on to a new single-player Batman game, according to Bloomberg once more, and it was once rumored that this was going to be an Arkham Asylum remake, but was then shut down by Del Walker, who was the senior character artist on the game. The trick, though, here, and the problem with when you have one really supremely bad brand identity breaking title like a Suicide Squad is that you lose the talent that made Rocksteady great up until that point. Its founders in Sefton Hill, as well as Jamie Walker, have left Rocksteady at the end of 2022 to form a new team called 100 Star Games, which is made of about 100 or so industry veterans, and we don't know what they're working on yet, but hey man, I really hope it's a superhero game. That would be sick. Bloomberg also stated in their report on the development of Suicide Squad that this title was completely understaffed.
If they don't have the IP, like if they don't have like the okay underneath Warner Bros. Or someone else to make a superhero game, what superhero are they going to be able to use?
And what did infest this studio was a culture of, yes, you've heard this many times before in AAA development, toxic positivity that discouraged criticism. But I think really,
I love that term. I love the term toxic positivity, because if I have someone working for me or I'm working with someone, I want to be able to tell you, I don't like that you did this. And they'll be like, I'll fix it. Like, you need that, or whatever you make is just going to be crap.
Really underneath it all, the real fall from grace for Rocksteady is that after Suicide Squad, while they were trying to figure out what they're going to do next, because Suicide Squad wasn't popping off, and Rocksteady does have a lot of brand recognition, the ability to make maybe another great superhero game, who knows, is that they were tasked to go work on the definitive edition for Hogwarts Legacy. Can you imagine that? Going from Arkham City, which I personally think is right there as the best superhero game ever. Like, you can ask me, some days it'll be Spider-Man 1, but most...
Confession, I've only watched these games. I have not played them, and I think I should.
Times Arkham City. To go from that to now making ports and definitive editions for other companies' games is a tremendous fall from grace. I'm rooting for Rocksteady, and to not make it all negative, I will say this. In a time where companies like Ubisoft, BioWare, it feels like people are trying to champion their downfall more than anything, I do feel like the door is slightly cracked open for Rocksteady to reclaim some of their reputation. When you really look at it objectively,
if their next game's garbage,
since 2009, they've had one miss, and it was pretty catastrophic. For a lot of people, their worst game before that was Arkham Knight. And if that is your worst game, then you're doing something really well, because that game not only looks beautiful to this day, but I love the story. I love the combat. Like, that game is amazing to me. So if that is your worst game per se, just like when WB ignores the likes of Arkham Origins because it's the worst one and it's amazing, I'm like, you really got not much to worry about there. So I do feel like Rocksteady
can they still do it without
grab their identity back, but they got to nail this next game, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, they're working on the Batman game they always should have. And I don't know if this is the Arkham universe or not. I mean, they kind of reversed some of the endings in a comic that released for Suicide Squad outside of the game that just pretty much went like, it was all a dream, if you will. It's stupid, man. Awful. What a waste of time, the fact that I beat that game. Now let's get into the fun one.
I didn't play Suicide
Monolith,
Squad.
Okay? This is a company that I think is really, really...
So here's the thing with those live service games, right? Is when one of those comes out, like, we've talked about this, Helldivers. I really want to play Helldivers. I don't have the time for it, and that's the one that I want to play. If a live service game like Suicide comes out, and everyone's like, this game's horrible, why? I'm not going to waste my time
interesting because in 2014 they brought us Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of Mordor slaps him.
So this is when I was talking about Lord of the Rings games. This the interesting thing about this game is they have a system. I want to say it's called the Nemesis system, and they copyrighted it. They patented it, whatever the correct term is. So no other games can use that unless they're under Warner Bros. Or whatever. And it's a really cool system. Like as a bad guy kills you, they level up. So your enemies can actually level up like you can. But then if you take them out, you level up more. Anyway, but I'm curious if he mentions anything like that.
Rocksteady free flow combat system with the ability to decapitate fools and the introduction of one of gaming's most unique mechanics in the Nemesis system. Yeah. For those who have never played a Shadow of game, we'll call it, War or something like Mordor, basically the Nemesis system allows you to have meaningful relationships with your enemies. So if you cut someone in the face and they manage to get away as you're being swarmed by enemies, when you meet up again, they're going to call back to what you did to them. And it creates this relationship with your adversaries that is just super, super unique. There's nothing quite like it. And there's a reason there's nothing quite like it that we'll get into. But in 2017, just 3 years later, we got Shadow of War, which was ruined for many people by weirdly shoehorned in microtransactions.
Yep.
These were loot boxes that would allow you to get more gear, allow you to get more orcs. And it wasn't until 9 months after the game's release that these were fully removed, no doubt after the check had cleared for WB and Monolith. In 2021, WB secured a patent for the signature Nemesis system, ensuring that, unlike almost every other mechanic in gaming, only WB and its family of studios would be able to iterate upon this technology. Now, to be clear, before I go on a little bit further, I don't mind protecting the branding of a technology. For example, Square Enix protected the name HD2D. So when you see something from their family, it is like that is their genre. They have pioneered a new visual genre. And I think that is totally fine. It's a marketing term. When I, as a huge HD2D fan, hear that term, I turn my head. Oh, triangle strategy. Oh, Octopath Traveler. You got it. I'm in just by art style alone.
So the problem with this is, okay, I'm going to let him finish and then I'll explain it.
And it works. That is okay. If they protected the name like Nemesis system is ours, but the mechanics y'all can mess around with, that's cool with me. But they protected the whole dang thing. So no one can iterate on it. Kind of like what we saw with Pal World and Pokemon and throwing a ball and catching a monster in an open field.
Okay, so there's a line, right? Where, let's say all of the Shadow games were 10 out of 10s. And they have this system, the Nemesis system, and they feel that's the thing that makes their game a 10 out of 10. If they let other companies use it, and those companies make bad games, all of a sudden, Nemesis system doesn't equate to 10 out of 10 in people's heads anymore. It's just an overused system. Now, I do kind of agree with what he's saying. Like, let people expand on things and make it better, free market, that kind of thing. But at the same time, I understand the studio side of it as well. And I don't know what the right answer is there, right? Like, people were mad that Pal World stole the idea of Pokemon where you capture monsters. But should there be no other games where you capture monsters with the ball? I don't know. Was Pal World a decent game and better than some of the most recent Pokemon games? Absolutely. So I don't know. I don't know where that line is, and it's a very tough question.
Can't do that. Only Nintendo can with Pokemon. Anyway, this is a great system that I would love to see pop up more often, but it's not going to beyond, of course, WB. And it looks like we're going to wait a while longer because in 2021, it was announced that Monolith was working on a Wonder Woman game. And when I first heard this, quite frankly, I struggled to imagine a Wonder Woman game mixing in the Nemesis system. I was like, how do these two work together? Because I feel like if you're going to pioneer this kind of technology and make it yours,
apparently this game's not even close to being done, by the way.
On iterating upon it. But this is where it gets really annoying. In the same report that we learned about a new single-player Batman game being in development at Rocksteady, we also learned that Monolith has ditched the Nemesis system in Wonder Woman for a more traditional, as they call it, action-adventure game, and the game has been rebooted. Just last year in 2024, and worse yet for WB at least, is that $100 million has already been spent on it. No doubt putting the pressure on this game to overperform because as
I bet it was, they switched it to a live service game at some point, and now that's why they're struggling. They That's why they didn't do the Nemesis system. They were trying to switch it to a live service option. They're like, uh-oh.
Much as I'm into a Wonder Woman game and will happily buy and play a Wonder Woman game, I don't know if it's got the broad appeal if, you know,
that's another good point.
Other DC-like experiments, like a Suicide Squad and how that went. I don't know. It doesn't really, I think, ring a lot of positive bells. It sounds more experimental, but I'm rooting for it. I do like Monolith games at the end of the day. And worse yet, I think the biggest red flag of all, it lost its game's director. So the person who's overseeing the entire experience and moving it forward, you pluck them out and put someone else in, hence the reboot. And so here we are now with a game that is no doubt years away. So you have
exactly
Rocksteady in dire straits. You have Monolith in dire straits. And now you got...
I wouldn't say Rocksteady's in dire straits yet. They release a bad game, then they're in dire straits.
Player first with MultiVersus.
They're in dire straits.
So when MultiVersus first hit the market, it took over. The player counts were insane, and it was really exciting. As I talked about briefly in a previous video this week, the idea of a platform fighter will always capture the masses. Smash really pioneered that idea, but here comes WB, ironically enough, with their own idea, saying we're going to do 2v2. We have all this IP from Scooby-Doo to Batman to Lord of the Rings that we can pull from, put it all in this big platform fighting game with these cool stages and super attacks and unlockables and progression, and boom, good to go, right? So absolutely, they take over when they enter the market. The player base started to fade a little bit, as would any prominent live service game a little bit over time. WB completely overreacted to it, slapped a label on the game saying it was a beta.
Might go down as one of the worst decisions in video games.
Pulled it from the market for over a year to go work on things, fix things over time. Then when they came back, the game barely made any noise.
Do you know what other game did this? X-Defiant. They released a beta. It was absolutely huge. It was a perfect time to compete with Call of Duty. And then they said it was the beta. They took it down, said they needed to work on everything, released the same game a year later. And it was big launch, don't get me wrong. But then it just died.
At all. If you look at the Steam numbers right now versus the all-time peak, we're talking 153,000 at its all-time peak.
Which honestly is not
now
insane.
It can barely crawl over 1,000, and that's with all the WB IP packed into it and plenty of time spent on it. How much money did this cost them? $100 million. It put them another $100 million in the hole. So if you combine what's going on with Monolith, what's going on with Rocksteady, and what's going on here with MultiVersus, you've got $400 million in the hole. Woo. That's awful, dude. That's awful. Even crazier is that 6 months before this earnings report, where you learned that it cost them $100 million, WB Games actually bought the developer of MultiVersus in Player First Games. Recently, we just learned they are shutting down the support for MultiVersus, with the game's offline mode being available for those who desire to play it again, but no doubt this one will eventually be delisted or something. A disappointing end to a game with a absolute metric ton of potential. But as you can see here, again, completely mishandled.
I mean, so did Suicide Squad,
you have the energy of the crowd, of the audience, and people are just engaging. Like, what's this new thing? I want to play it. Oh, it's free. Cool. I'm going to download it. When you take that off the market, even if the game has problems, which I'm not acting like MultiVersus was free of problems, when you take that off the market, you completely ruin the game's potential. It was one of the worst choices, especially because I don't know. I was looking it up. I didn't see any mention of like, this is the beta. We're testing it out. It was like, here you go. Come play. It's good to go.
Yeah, that's kind of true. It was like a couple weeks in when they were like, oh, this is the beta.
Them taking it off the market for like a year or so was just, when it came back, as someone who played like immediately like 20, 30 hours into it, even I didn't jump back into it because this industry
I didn't play it again.
There's so many games to play. We've all likely moved on to our next experience.
I played it when it came out,
or
I didn't play it again.
We're working on our backlogs that are growing. So when you have that moment, when you have that grip on an audience, why would you ever let it go? It's unbelievable to me. Now
this is what I say with Call of Duty. This is what I say with Call of Duty. When you release a new season, when you release a new game, you have to captivate people. And they did that at the beginning of Black Ops 6. The Warzone integration came in, it fell apart, and then Season 2 came out with a million problems. They're screwing it. They're shooting themselves in the foot. You got to strike while the iron's hot.
Our attention to WB Games Montreal. Between 2013 and now, they have released one game, and it was Gotham Knights. Now, I know some people genuinely like Gotham Knights. Look, I'm not trying to poo-poo on anyone's party. If you like Gotham Knights, good. I actually wish I was like that. I did a retrospective on Retro Rebound for it, trying to play it again, and I still think this is one of the worst written games I've personally played in this generation. Not only that, but when it comes to Gotham Knights, I felt like it was immediately a compromised product from the start. You could immediately sense the live service elements it was originally built upon, much like, say, a Veilguard, where you just felt the remnants of that old game, and it was very hard to
Veilguard was supposed to be a live service game. I don't know if you knew that.
RPG felt very out of place as I was grinding for gear or grinding missions in the open world to unlock other story missions. It just felt like two games that were designed at different times and trying to find an ideal route.
And it sounds like that's what Wonder Woman's going to be now.
Ended up getting. Point being, even if you like it, I think you can admit the game didn't necessarily light everyone's fire, and that's not really great when you wait that long for their next entry between Arkham Origins and now. To be fair, in between these years, they had canceled titles like a Batman game about the Court of Owls, but this wouldn't be the only cancellation we'd learned about, as we just learned in this same Bloomberg report that they had recently canceled a Flash game in the works because of how badly the DCU film had done. And yes, I've heard bad things about the film, but I'm sure this has a lot to do with the rampaging lead actor right ahead of the movie coming out, to the point where people thought that WB was going to have to pull this thing from the box office before it had actually launched. Like, it was getting to that point. I feel like that had something to do with it.
Probably.
You know, to me, this is the biggest bummer. I've been saying there might be an Easter egg video I have on this channel for when Arkham Origins came out, and I remember speculating that Rocksteady was going to go on to make like a Justice League game or something, because there was like a street sign that point to like Metropolis and stuff, and I didn't recognize at the time because I was just a dumb kid. That this is just a cool little Easter egg, a little nod to other DC characters. I thought it was something so much more, but nonetheless, back then and even now, the dream game for me that I was like, I'm just so curious how a developer could figure it out, was a Flash game, right? And I have to say that if there was one aspect I did enjoy a bit when it came to Suicide Squad, it was just seeing Flash, because for me, I was like, wow, finally, like,
how do you play
I get to see him in a game. I mean, it's not perfect,
you just like cool. Bullet time, slow down time, he moves faster than ever. I don't know.
Cool, like he's finally here. So it's just a bummer to see that they were pitching that and it got shut down.
I don't know also, how gameplay would work.
They were pitching a John Constantine game, which also got rejected. And now it's said that WB Games Montreal is moving on to pitch a new Game of Thrones title. This comes after 99 job layoffs had occurred at the studio in 2024, and that's reportedly a third of this team's workforce. So they're not exactly in the best position either.
Game of Thrones game, isn't
of releases,
like a mobile game just come out for Game of Thrones?
Which seems to be a very regular thing. And I know it's very common, by the way, in game development. I'm just throwing out there that this is just a highly reported thing when it comes to WB Games Montreal specifically. I'm hoping they can get something off the ground, but I got to wonder about this team's future as they continue to try and figure it out. Oftentimes forgotten in the conversation of WB Games is the Lego division. Yeah, they have TT Games, who makes...
This is big. Like, this is, I think this is like a bigger thing than you think.
Amazing Lego games. And so this has been a little bit troubled as of late, if a report from Polygon in 2022 is to be believed. It's there that we learned that according to more than 30 current and former employees there at the time, crunch culture was real, development schedules were tight, and tools were outdated, giving birth to the inside term known as PTTSD. Skywalker Saga would face 3 separate delays, with overtime being an expectation and directors even following staff out of the building to see if the reason they were leaving was valid despite them clocking out at the proper time. This team went from annual releases that had to meet deadlines of, say, films like we saw with many a Lego release, to now a 5-year development cycle on what is the penultimate Lego Star Wars game, or at least they were trying to do that combined the adventures of all 9 films together. Part of the wait was due to what is called feature creep, which you can absolutely see in the final product for yourself, the overhauled melee combat, which, you know,
apparently it's a really good game though.
The Lego games are supposed to be very simple and easy to pick up, so I never had an issue with the combat, but I do think the combos you can chain together in Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga is kind of sick. They added third-person shooting, they had open world elements, they had an optional mumble mode, and I'm probably forgetting a bunch, but they had a lot that was thrown into this game over time, and so that makes it like a great Lego experience. But that was a very long development cycle for a Lego game versus what we typically got, which is like every year or two was a new big Lego game. Now they're rumored to be working, of course, on a new Lego game, but the IP is said to be either Lego Batman or Lego Harry Potter, so we'll find out as time goes on. But
don't they have all the Lego Harry Potter films done already?
But the frequency of TT Games releases, especially in this generation, has been
They'll probably do Harry Potter,
and no doubt that is a loss of revenue.
Hogwarts Legacy.
The Lego brand is excellent, right? Like, you have people like me, man-child, who just love Legos and love Lego games, who will pick up all the Lego games. I have like every single Lego game in my collection, and it's something I want to one day just sit down, plop my ass in this chair, and just go through all of them at some point. So you got people like me, and then of course it's an easy gift for kids. It's a great franchise for kids. So you get this kind of IP that can target all audiences. You can play.
Well, I mean, you look at like the most successful movie genre, and it is animated kids films, because for a while there, they were the only thing doing well in theaters.
Up with your kids or with your friends. Like, it has such a broad appeal in a very natural way, which is why it's always been such a high seller. So for TT Games to go away for a while is another dip in revenue. NetherRealm is up next because right now there's just a lot of rumors and speculation. So we'll focus on them very little, but I still wanted to address them in the conversation. They do make the highest production value in the terms of fighters, right there next to Tekken 8. Like, after Tekken 8, I think they're neck and neck now. But before Tekken 8, I would say easily NetherRealm was the creme de la creme when it came to story presentation, cutscenes. Of course, the money they probably have to pay to get these guest fighters in on Mortal Kombat has to be absolutely insane. But while I'm not a big fan of like the cameo system in Mortal Kombat 1, these guest characters are catching my eye. Just a lot of really cool names popping up. Despite that, in selling 5 million copies, there was a belief that this had not done enough for WB, and
which is wild with 5 million
shut down
copies
a little bit earlier, and that they may have to hustle on to whatever is next for them, which is presumably, if that Nvidia leak from years ago is to be believed, Injustice 3.
Oh yes.
Still, when you have a Mortal Kombat game that also serves as a great entry point, selling over 5 million copies, and it still might not be enough. That is a big.
You got to look at the systemic issues.
I don't want to put too much doom around
5 million
them yet,
copies should be
everything
plenty.
else we've covered here. There's less information about Mortal Kombat, but what we can talk about is the team that's responsible for all of these companies basically staying in business, and that is Avalanche, who went on to make, alongside Portkey Games, Hogwarts Legacy. And Hogwarts Legacy pushed past 20 million copies.
This is going to be whatever happens with this studio next. This is going to be the future of Warner Brothers. And like, if they go for live service and it flops, that's when Warner Brothers is screwed. If they go for single player and it booms, which it will, if they stick with single player, I guarantee it'll sell 1 million copies within like the first day. If not a lot more, but like,
and did the unthinkable, outselling Call of Duty. This is absolutely crazy to think about. That almost never happens. In fact, I can't think of a game off the top of my head where it did happen, where a non-Call of Duty game just surpassed Call of Duty in sales in a calendar
GTA 5
year. That is absolutely incredible. That has led to a sequel being greenlit, according to...
Okay, here's how you do a Harry Potter live service, though. Warner Brothers, you can pay me later, but here's how you do it. You do Harry Potter. You don't do Hogwarts. You do Harry Potter. And it is a 8-year game. It follows the books, and each year is a new book. Each book has different seasons. So by the time you get to summer of the first year, Hogwarts is gone. You go back home, you go to London, and you are in London, and you set it in that way. And basically you follow the books through 8 years, and during certain seasons, that part of the movie is in that, and then somehow you work in the live service stuff. And I don't know whether you play as Harry Potter or you play as someone else who kind of goes along with that Harry Potter story, but that's how you do it. You do it with seasons, and you do it with school seasons, and there's classes and there's all of that. It's doable, but you have to work Harry Potter in with it, and you have to do it like a school year. And I think it's completely doable, but you have to do it right. And I don't think at this point, Hogwarts Legacy, you leave as a single player game. If you're going to do the live service, you do it with something else, and you do it freaking right. And I think there's a way to do it.
WB Discovery's CFO, they called it one of their biggest priorities. And DLC is apparently coming this year in the form of a definitive edition, which we now know Rocksteady may have helped a bit on, with about 10 to 15 hours of additional content.
I wonder what that could be, though.
And I will just say this, with a very much money-hungry, foaming at the mouth for live service WB Games division, who needs wins, and they have their golden child IP here in something like a Hogwarts Legacy, I think the natural human reaction is to be like, all right, y'all do your thing and just go print money. But again, throwing in all these other factors and how much money they need, I could see them just ramping up Hogwarts Legacy, as they probably should. I mean, Harry Potter did not see a major AAA game release up until Hogwarts Legacy, and it showed that there was a major demand for that over all of these years when we saw the sales numbers for this game. And no doubt with the definitive edition and the DLC, it's going to pop up again. I think out of a bunch of terrible business moves, this is probably their best one. Let's put DLC and a definitive edition out for Hogwarts Legacy and see how it does. And no doubt it's going to sell millions of copies. But as they try to expand
I wonder
this
what that
IP
extra
and do
content
more
is.
Hogwarts Legacy things, I worry about, do they try to inject live service elements,
Yeah.
multiplayer elements, spin-offs? Like, what does this become? Because no doubt it's a tentpole now with those sort of sales compared to everything else that they have. I could see a world where they absolutely push TT Games to work on a Lego Harry Potter game, given what we're seeing here with Hogwarts Legacy. It's like, give them more Harry Potter. They want more Harry Potter. Give it to them. Anyway, that's the state of WB Games. I know it was a long video, but as you can see, just absolutely abysmal performance from top to bottom. And it's just inexcusable with the IP that they own. I think the easiest solution.
I mean, you'd say that with Ubisoft as well. Like, look at their IP. You'd say that with, I mean, BioWare is kind of like their own, yeah.
Is to go and do what Marvel did. Marvel was trying to spin up their own stuff constantly. And we saw what happened when we got like the Thor MCU game, the Captain America MCU game. Like, it just, it wasn't really working out. But when they started licensing things out and we got things like Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, I know not all of these have sold incredibly well, but man, what a difference in quality when you go to a developer with a vision versus forcing your in-house studios.
That's a good point. This is actually a really good point.
They don't really have much passion for. You can just see and feel the difference. And Marvel, again, is the living example of leading in that proper direction. So I hope WB does go in that route. I think that they can have their cake and eat it too. They can have all of their technology and studios lead in-house if they want to work on these IP. But I think if WB is looking to make good money, start licensing this stuff out, man. Not only is the quality falling, but the gaps in releases, the fact that we just ditched Batman completely to try and kill him off in a Suicide Squad game and bring him back in a comic that was outside of the game itself is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Go give it to a team that is actually passionate about it. I'm rooting for all of these teams. I hope they do get back on their feet because WB has a lot of important IP. And I always say that, you know, same thing when people were like cheering.
It's going to be interesting, right? Like, not so much with BioWare and EA, but like Ubisoft and Warner Bros. Have so much IP. Is it actually better if it gets sold off? Like, it might be at this point.
On something like a Ubisoft being sold off to Tencent, I'm like, be careful what you wish for. Right, so
yeah,
I'm hoping WB gets
right?
back
like,
on
what's
their
the
feet
right
after
option?
they
That's
seem to be retooling, hitting the reset button. We'll see, but those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Fire away down below with yours, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to any of it. I don't know what's best for anyone or anything, and it's just interesting to see what happens. Like, this is an unprecedented time for games. And the games that are doing well aren't from the major AAA developers. So it's going to be interesting. Is it a changing of the guard? Is it a selling off of IPs? Is it just a slow period while people realize that not every game can be a live service game? I don't know. But time will tell, and it'll be interesting nonetheless.